So actually, I had a little bit of a disagreement on this with Greg Shahade because I made a video about how I feel like puzzle books are better than online tactics trainers, because in puzzle books you get problems that are kind of handpicked by humans for their instructive value, and I think you get ideas that are more thematic. Whereas online tactics trainers, they just scan games and the engine just finds moments where there was a clear winning move and then it just turns that into a puzzle. Even though it might be weird, it might be obvious, it often is not a great. Anyway, you guys can check out that video if you want to hear my full thoughts. And Greg, it was actually like, I don't know, these kids today, and Greg works with the US Chess School, so he's come in contact with so many just like super, super talented kids. He was like, I don't know, these kids, they just do chess.com tactics trainer all day, every day, and they're, 2,400 USCF, 3,000 in tactics. He seemed to think it doesn't matter where your tactics come from. And we can definitely discuss, whether Puzzle Rush is better or worse than just doing like the regular tactics where you're, timed but not rushing. But yeah, there's a lot to unpack here. And again, there's also a distinction to be made. A lot of like we all grew up playing tournaments. We're mostly tournament players, so we're usually thinking about OTB and how to get better at classical OTB. There's lots of players out there that just want to get better at online blitz, and for them, different tactics training might be more suitable. Again, I'm on the side of like you need a balance. Like I like having good problems that come from like books, but it's also good to solve a lot of problems to get a lot of volume in, build up your patterns, and really like, that's what I love about Puzzle Rush. It really forces you to like find a lot of those simple tactics very, very quickly. And over time, I think it definitely helps with pattern recognition. But yeah, I just think there's just like so many aspects of calculation to work on. There's no one size fits all solution, it seems to me.
I suspect there's elements of quantity versus quality in this question, because one like advantage, if you want to call it that, of online puzzles is like, I bet the people who've done a lot of online puzzles have done more puzzles than anyone who studied chess tactics from books ever did. Like you just you run out of books. You can't turn the pages as fast. You can't set it up on a board as fast if you're trying to do it like OTB with actually setting up puzzles on a board, which is something I used to do. Like it's just the practicality of it is that people who are doing puzzles online are just doing tons more, which is part of that question with like the blitz also, right? It's just like a glut of it. I mean, you can do it on like an app on your phone anywhere you go, right? So when you've got 10 seconds free, where you'd have to get a book out of your backpack and like find your page and stuff. I mean, it's just, so there's definitely an element of they're just doing more. And then you can ask, are the puzzles less good, or how many of them are less good, and what kind of a mix do you need?
Yeah, definitely a question of quantity versus quality. I don't know. I think both are useful, but you need quality at some point. Yeah, it can't just all be candy and the easy stuff.
Yeah, I think it's fascinating. I guess I have a pretty strong opinion on this. I mean, I feel first of all that if you're just beginning, that things like Puzzle Rush are fine. And if you want to give yourself a goal of first 15, then 20, then 25, 30, that's all going to be beneficial just so you get like the basic patterns. After that, no, I think like this battle me and Kostya Kavutskiy going, it is not helping anybody. It's not helping either of us. It's fun, and it's a diversion from my real troubles in life. Absolutely. That part of it is great. But it's not helping either one of us. And I think there's, the way I would put it out there just to be helpful about this, and we'll put this in the YouTube description, the links, is I'd say there's 4 books. I might do my own video about this, so it's so hard to get around to doing a video, but here's 4 books that I think give a good sense of where I think your tactics really will improve, right? And the first book I think that beginners should get is the Polgar with a gazillion mates in it. Great. it's like practicing the layups. You're practicing your tactical mate layups. All the patterns are there and you get them again and again, and they are not easy. Well, at least some of them are easy, but most of them, many of them are quite challenging. Then there's a bunch of books. I have one that you can't get. It's very hard to get. It's a Russian book by Kalinichenko. It's very hard to get, but with endgame standard positions and studies. That is very important. Studies are a great example of what you do not get in the Puzzle Rush. It's because it's too hard to do on some kind of thing where you only have, less than 30 seconds. You need, for a puzzle, or excuse me, a study, you're going to need like 5 minutes, and then it's a thing of beauty that's going to reveal itself to you.
But Jesse, if I could just interject for 1 second without interrupting your train of thought. You may not reach them in Puzzle Rush, but if you just do puzzles online in chess.com, the chess.com database is full of endgame studies.
Yeah, and I still don't think it's good because your mind, when you're online, is not prepared to do anything at a longer. You're gonna if you do anything, and you're staring at something online for more than a couple minutes, you will be distracted. I don't care who you are, the Twitter or whatever. You're gonna look away and you're gonna lose it, right? Whereas if you got a real board and you got to study, you're gonna be there. The other two books, and this is really the heart of my argument, is that you need books that have real positions from real games where it's not just, white to move and win. It's got to be like, which path do you go down and what is the evaluation? What is the evaluation at the end? Because in the real game, you don't generally have like the win thing. No, it's going to be like, here's a path to maybe an advantage. Here's the right way to do something. And this is why. And so, for example, I'm loving this book. This book's very hard to get, but nowadays you can get it. The Best Move by Hort and Jansa. Fantastic, very difficult, but positions taken from their own games. And then, of course, as people who've watched this show a lot, I like Perfect Your Chess by Volo Keaton. Beautiful. And Grabinski. Beautiful book, also from real games. And what it points to is, if you want to improve tactics, go over your games. They're there. All the tactics are there, man. Everything of beauty is there in your games, even if you think that a super GM can only do the beautiful tactics. No, it's in your games.
No, it's really important.
That's my old school advice. And like I said, I think the puzzles for the beginner players, great. But once you want to progress to like deeper thought, you've got to step away from the computer. That's my 2 cents.
I think I'm pretty close to where you're at, Jesse. I feel like the online trainers, Puzzle Rush, Survival, the regular ones are great for like basic tactics and basic combinations. But the funny thing is, like, they don't get that basic. I mean, I think it takes several years to get to a level where you're just like solving the basic combinations and getting stuff right and seeing a lot of these puzzles. I think for most people out there, they are struggling to get to like 15, 20, 25 in Puzzle Rush or even Survival, because it's like, well, the puzzles get challenging. So there definitely is a lot of room for the online stuff. It is very practical. I'm a big fan of the CTR app because they come on mobile, and they're very, very I think easy to use, and they have great puzzles and lots of variety. But yeah, at a certain point, you got to start working on the deep thinking. And I've totally had that experience where, I set up a study over the board with like a training partner. We can spend 30 minutes looking at the position without moving a piece. But then online, I get a study and it's like, okay, I'll think for like 3 to 5 minutes maximum. And then I'm just like, this is not what I signed up for. I want to just move quickly, and I'm pretty sure this is the first move, so let me just make it and see if it's right. Okay, now I can think from here. That's what the online kind of drives you to do, and it's not great. But I think people in general should honestly not worry about it too much. I think people spend more time discussing like what kind of tactics they should be doing than actually doing the tactics. I just feel like 45 minutes a day, choose something, choose a book, choose a tool online, choose an app, and just work through it, and then go to the next one. I think it's really more about like the habits. Like when you solve a puzzle, do you go through the solution? When you get it wrong, do you analyze the solution? Do you try to ingrain the pattern into your mind? When you miss a tactic in a game, do you play over it 4, 5, 6 times to make sure you never miss that tactic again? I think some of these habits is what can really maybe drive improvement more so than whatever book or tool you're using. To add to your point about the Polgar book, for people that don't want like a huge bulky book, I really like the new series of books by Polgar, Learn Chess the Right Way. It has very similar problems. It's just that the books are smaller in series 1 through 5 and more portable, so you don't have to get the huge black book out every time you want to solve.
You can get it on
puzzles.
Kindle. You can get it on Kindle.
Oh, okay, that's good too. Yeah.
I think that I'm probably a little bit more positive about online puzzle tools than the two of you were. I don't think that there's probably any particular limitation in how good somebody could get at tactics by just using online tactics trainers. I don't think there would be a ton missing. This may overlap a little bit into our next topic, Chessable, which admittedly I know less than either of you. But my understanding is that in addition to simple like puzzle trainers, you can also find sort of like curated tactics training through various online tools. That you could find something like, a collection of puzzles as a Chessable course probably, or something like that.
Yeah.
Through chess.com's lessons, there are some tactics courses. And then I also think that it's possible that what these computer generated puzzles give you is they actually eliminate some human bias. So you may learn some like tactics that a chess teacher wouldn't think of putting in their book. Somebody who's learned chess like OTB and not from computers might not put certain kinds of tactics into their book because they might not think about it. And sometimes in these online collections, you get these like surprise positions or shocking like motifs almost that you didn't pick up as a kid, and you're like, oh, some computer noticed this in somebody's game, like I wouldn't have realized that you could do a thing like this. So
yeah, I feel those puzzles aren't as good. I have that bias. It's like,
okay,
for me, I just think that the thematic puzzles are generally going to be more useful, but there is definitely value in finding creative solutions, like original solutions, like ideas that are not thematic. Definitely a lot of value in learning how to like spot ideas that are not immediately obvious to you. But yeah, I just feel like you get too many of those in the online trainers, and then you just get some weird puzzles. But
maybe too many. But if alongside of that you're cranking thousands and tens of thousands of them, maybe you're getting like a lot of the stuff that you would get curated, and then you're getting some other like dimensions.
There is also the question of whether it's better to solve tactics on a specific theme, which to me has always made sense. If you're learning about deflections or interference or discovered attacks, to just solve like 30 puzzles on the exact same theme. And yes, they are going to be easier because you know what the theme is, but to me that's still building up your pattern recognition. Chessable does have these courses that I think are pretty cool, where they'll take an opening and they'll say like, 1,000 tactics in the Sicilian Dragon. And it's just a collection of combinations from White's point of view, from Black's point of view. And it does make sense that like just solving a lot of these thematic tactics, if you're a Sicilian Dragon player, would be really, really useful, as you're probably going to be seeing these ideas in your game. But as always, it doesn't cover everything. You still have to learn how to think for yourself and navigate through weird positions. So there is a value, especially to not knowing what the theme is and just being asked, to find the best move. And yeah, for advanced players, of course, like Jesse was saying, there are lots of books where you're not asked to find a clear win. You're just asked to find the best continuation. Maybe it's a small advantage. Maybe you're just asked to find the only way to equalize. But you're put in a difficult situation. You have to come up with a decision. I think those are also very useful, of course, but more for advanced players. I feel like most players out there need to first get their building blocks down, their solid, tactical patterns, their mating patterns, get all that stuff down where they're recognizing stuff quickly, and then, you can start working on the more advanced stuff.
Yeah, I guess one good question to try and like push us to actually disagree is like, do you feel like there's a point at which someone's tactics couldn't get better without, human training on their tactics, without like a set of positions selected for them by, Volokitin or a GM coach or something like that? Like, is there some point where the tactics trainers, you've done all the puzzles there were, and now your tactics are dragging you down? They're keeping you from becoming, a super GM.
Yeah, I think it is really helpful to kind of see how a student analyzes and solves a position. And lots of people that I've worked with, they have these weird, tendencies while they're calculating, or they're not as efficient in their thought process as they could be. Typical mistakes include, going down a line before fully examining what options you have available, missing opponents' resources because they're not really looking for the opponent's best moves. There's lots of these like typical things that like an online trainer isn't going to point out to you if you solve enough puzzles, right? Like, hey, you need to be doing this, or you need to be spending more time calculating before you make a move here. I think you do need the human element when it comes to like thought process in solving.
And David, I guess I'd even push it further and say, like, what the problems will do for you in a negative way, it's not just like you're not exposed to certain types of problems, but what it'll do in a negative way is it pushes you, like Kostya said, to make a move. Mm-hmm. And you're online, you're going to be pushed to make a move. And there's this culture of sitting on your hands and really thinking about something until you feel like you've got it. You're not going to get that in the online world. And that is going to kill you when you are playing over the board, because it will encourage impulsive moves. And you're not going to make it as an impulsive player. No way.
I mean, I would argue that there again, you fall into like the 90% who feel like they have to move and like things have to go faster online. And so you're sort of assuming that that's how everybody reacts to being on a computer or having a screen. And I'm here to tell you, from the 10% on this particular element or whatever the percentage is, like, there are people for whom that's not the case. And I've talked to tons and tons of people, and I hear, whatever, 80 or 90% of people always say, like, I can't take a game as seriously online as in person. No, you want to play like a 6-hour classical game with me online, I'll never be able to play it like normally, right? But there are people who can. I promise you, I'm one of them. Like, I can play classical chess exactly the same right here with my board by my side, right? And a score sheet on the table, and it's exactly the same for me. My focus, I'm not checking Twitter while I'm playing a game or anything like that, right? So there are people who are different in all kinds of ways, and I don't think it's like a 1% or a 1 in a million kind of thing. I think it's probably like there's a reasonable number of people who take things slowly and seriously, even with a computer screen. And I'll solve endgame studies on my computer, and I'll sit there for half an hour. I mean, I've played king, knight, and pawn against king and knight for like 3 hours straight against like a computer on chess.com, and I'm trying really hard. And so again, I don't think you can guarantee that people are going to all be having to move quickly just because they're on a computer.
And one thing I think is important to say about the Zoomer generation, and this is somebody, it's like somebody who has taught other realms of things besides chess, is that I grew up in let's call it the age of text. Like, there were books, and it was a skill to learn how to read, how to talk about reading, how to write. And I don't necessarily think it's a terrible thing that that's all gone away, but it's important to see that it has all gone away, and the kids coming up today have not learned to read. And so, to David's point, like, maybe they haven't learned to read, but maybe they have learned, or at least some of them have learned, to have a culture of like, oh, I can focus when I'm in front of this screen because I grew up in front of this screen. This is my home.
Might be better able to.
And if you look at like online, when schools went online because of COVID, some students really suffered from it, and some did just fine, right? And some did better than when they were in brick and mortar schools. I mean, you can ask any teacher, and they'll have experienced at least a handful of students who suddenly were better students at home on Zoom than they had been in school.
So there was a good question about speed versus accuracy, and you guys can feel free to disagree with me on this one, but my feeling is that speed always comes second, and it's much more important to work on the ability to solve a problem correctly. So if you have a simple tactic and it takes you 10 minutes to get the right answer, to me that's better than if you submit the wrong answer after 1 minute. And then on other problems, you get it right after 1 minute, but you were kind of guessing. I think it's better to work on your actual ability to solve, given however much time you want. And you don't have to go crazy. I like to say like more than 15 minutes is probably not that needed, especially when you're starting out. For some folks, I'll say like spend 5 minutes on a puzzle, and then if you don't get it, you can review the solution or guess. If it's harder, 10, 15 minutes. And then once you've solved a couple thousand puzzles, then you can try doing it for speed, and you can see like which of your patterns are not as strong as others.
Right. You made a good point previously about how like sometimes you'll see like an inefficiency in the thought process of a student or something like that. So there also does come a point where speed and efficiency in your thought process is important as well, right? Because you're playing like this 2-hour game and you've got 2 hours of time. That's your resource, and you're burning it up, and then eventually you're in time pressure and you can't calculate accurately because you don't have enough time. As I'm like trying to replay now as an older person, like I'm noticing that more as a factor, sort of like running out of time by being inefficient on early calculations. Even though you get them right, then eventually you don't have enough time left.
Yeah. Once again, I think there's like a balance to it, but I would say either one is not good. You don't want to be moving too quickly or too slowly for sure. But for me, I'd rather have a student that was moving too slowly and we can like work on their confidence. I feel like that's kind of a better skill to start with, versus someone who's like, just playing too quickly, and you just got to get them to like slow down and start thinking. That's like a much harder process.
Yeah. I guess I will say, and maybe you guys will be happy with this, but I guess I will say that it's probably hard for somebody's tactics to be beyond a 2,500 FIDE level without some kind of like coaching on it, without some kind of like targeted, somebody's worked with them on their thought process or given them given them GM level puzzles that are like designed for them, or like really like sort of human generated tactics work. I think there probably is like a point where just solving 5,000 more puzzles from an online database is not gonna get you all the way to the top.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it wouldn't even be about like whether you can do it. I would just think it's probably easier if you got to 1,800 on your own, and then someone works with you and shows you how to get to the next level, versus just having to do it all on your own the whole time. I think it's always going to be easier when someone experienced steps in and kind of helps you with your thought process. I mean, even like one hint or one kind of tip can, I think, be dramatically changing for the right player.